Hey, this is Brent Jensen. You're listening to No Sleep Till Sudbury, the show where we talk about the music that makes your skin vibrate. Brought to you by Pariah Pickups, handcrafted guitar pickups made with love down in Detroit City. Check them out, pariahpickups.com. Joining me on the program today is Ellis Meek, a singer-songwriter who got my attention a year or so ago with a song called Night Moon, back when he was known as Jordan Paul. I was immediately drawn to Night Moon, and I've been a fan of his ever since. Now, he returns to the show today after having recovered from the very serious illness that he suffered that forced him to cancel his scheduled appearance on the show back in November. Here he is. Ellis Meek, thank you so much for joining me today, man. How you doing?
Doing well. Thanks for having me, Brent. It's good to be back.
I'm glad to have you back. Now, you were on the roster for the No Sleep Till Sudbury Steam Whistle special back in November of last year, and that was when you were known as Jordan Paul. But shortly before you were scheduled to come in, you had alerted me to the fact that you weren't feeling well and that you probably shouldn't come in. And after that, you proceeded to become quite ill. And I just found out about this a couple of weeks ago. So we were talking about it, and it's quite possible that you did actually have COVID.
Yeah, it's presumed that I did anyways by my doctor, but either way, whatever I had really wiped me out, and I ended up not being able to breathe for quite some time, losing my voice, and it created a lot of rheumatoid responses, so I couldn't play or sing for months, and still to this day, I'm not at full capacity. I'm using an inhaler, so I'm just kind of bouncing back from that, but I really feel like that gave me a new perspective, and I'm now, really grateful for every moment, because there was a point there where I thought I wouldn't play or sing again, and I felt like I really had to re-examine the importance of gratitude and appreciation and appreciating myself and others beyond physicality to a much greater extent.
Wow. Yeah. Well, something like that. I mean, you had told me in your message that you think that it's quite possible that you could have died. People talk about stuff like this all the time. This is a very serious, situation. And as we talked about it, I thought, good on you for not coming in, because it could have turned into a super spreader. And you quite honestly, without being overly dramatic, you quite honestly probably saved a couple of people, potentially saved their lives.
That's definitely possible, because I truly did feel, at one point that I was going to die from whatever this was. So, yeah, it's definitely was the right choice not coming in, that's for sure.
Yeah, I'm just glad that you're feeling better. It's a crazy story.
Yeah, me too. And I wouldn't ever want to expose anyone else to that. And it definitely sort of conveys the seriousness of this illness.
Mm-hmm, definitely. A lot of people missed you back in November, and the Steam Whistle folks, I was talking to them about this, and they told me that you are welcome to come back anytime. They told me to tell you that.
That's amazing. I would absolutely love to, because I know, I was really disappointed. I knew I couldn't be there, so that's great that the door's open, because, I love the Roundhouse, and you got to like Steam Whistle.
Yeah, no, they wish you well, and they send their best. So I'm glad you're feeling better. This is great. And I'm glad to have you here today. This is awesome.
Yeah, thank you.
We were going to talk about, back in October, you had released Archetype X. A lot of great material you've been kind of compiling in the last little while since you and I spoke. So Archetype X came out last October, and it was accompanied by a really cool video, actually.
It was actually put together using footage from a student film made by Art Clokey, who was the creator of Gumby.
Oh, no way.
So it's actually in the public domain, but it's something he created originally as a student film.
Ah.
And he had showed to a producer, I can't remember at which big studio, NBC or something along those lines. I'm not entirely sure. They saw him do this, and he was asked if he would consider doing children's programming in the claymation style, and that's where Gumby was born.
No way. Wow. It does, the more I think about it now, I can make that connection in my mind. It makes perfect sense to me watching the video.
Totally.
Yeah.
I thought it really fit the song well, and I edited it to it. It's kind of awesome. That's one thing about public domain footage. And with the current restrictions, it's kind of hard to film a video right now. So for me, getting to really edit the video and add another dimension to the song is really special. And even getting Art Clokey's work to sort of live on through this is, to me, a pretty awesome honor.
Well, it just adds to your mystique. That's the thing. I mean, I saw the video for Night Moon, one of your first singles, and it got my attention because you were sending this message, and it really made me think. I love the song, obviously still do, but like the video provides this alternate imagery, and you think like, what is he trying to tell me here? It's just a fascinating video, and this is the exact same thing.
Oh, that's awesome, man. Yeah, I'm always trying to tell a visual story too. And I think that one of my favorite things about multimedia is being able to combine video and sound and the extra dimensionality that brings.
Mm-hmm.
And that's one of my greatest interests and passions. It's just how they can work together to make the piece and the story stronger.
Yeah. Now, Ellis, you've got your songs here, and this is from actually the Steam Whistle session. So you've got your old list. It's an obscure and sophisticated list, as your last one was. And
cool.
Yeah, no, there's great picks. There's a couple I love on this list, so we're going to get to those. So you kick it off with Beatles. It's All Too Much. This is on Yellow Submarine, I think. It was left off Sgt. Pepper.
Yeah, it was. It was a Yellow Submarine, sort of in many ways, kind of a throwaway track because it's a Harrison song.
Mm-hmm. It's
not one that really gets enough love, in my opinion. You almost never hear of it. I mean, you'd never hear of it in the greatest Beatles songs list, or, if you were just a sort of occasional listener of the Beatles, you might not have even ever heard it.
Mm-hmm. It is obscure. It is kind of cool because I think it was recorded too late for Sgt. Pepper. I know it was left off.
Yeah, I believe it was sort of either at the tail end of those sessions or just after. I'm quite sure it was just after.
Mm-hmm.
The thing is I love about the song is that, to me, I think it's actually one of the most simple and the most spiritual of any of the Beatles catalog.
Mm.
I love the idea that it conveys of non-attachment. All the world's birthday cakes will have a piece, but not too much. Mm-hmm. I just think that line sums up the whole thing really well.
George was a very spiritual, sentimental songwriter. If you think about All Things Must Pass, there was a couple songs on that record that were Beatles rejections. He had approached the band and they said, no, it doesn't fit. He was always seemingly very conscious of his role in society and what he was giving to people and what they were giving back to him, I find.
Yeah, and I think, he believed, like I do, that, we're not these bodies and we're all connected through this experience, and, we're all one, we're all the same, and that, it's really important to not only love others, but to be able to do that, to love ourselves.
Mm-hmm. Okay, your next tune here is, I'm not familiar with this one, Lonnie, Holley, and All Rendered Truth.
Yeah, I love this one. Lonnie Holley, I think, is one of the most interesting figures in art and music. So he was also called the Sandman.
Oh, okay.
And his birthday is February 10th. So I don't know when this is going to go on air, but today is February 9th. So his birthday is actually tomorrow.
Mm.
So I definitely wanted to give a shout out to him for that. He was the seventh of 27 children born to his mother during the Jim Crow era. And
wow.
He's this really interesting figure. He's from Birmingham, Alabama. So he's from the South, and he was traded. He claims to have been traded for a bottle of whiskey when he was 4 years old. Like, he's just had this tragic and yet amazing story. First, his sister lost 2 children,
mm-hmm.
and he carved their tombstones, and that was his first work of art. And then he started making all this found object art. So he would find trash from all over the city and turn it into art. And he covered his whole yard
mm-hmm.
in this art. And he had a very modest house. And I think when they were expanding the Birmingham airport, they were going to pay $15,000 or something for his house. But because of his art, he managed to get something like $200,000 or something for the house. And he had his art shown at the Smithsonian, American Folk Art Museum, like all over. He's done some really, really cool stuff. And I think he just sort of brought some of his sandstone carvings to the Birmingham Museum of Art director. Mm-hmm. And the guy was just blown away that he made any of this out of sandstone, and sort of took off from there. And as a musician, he started to just record music that was totally stream of consciousness. Mm-hmm. And that's what I love about his music. And All Rendered Truth, the acronym is ART, art. And I think that's the beauty behind it. And it's just this stream of consciousness poem over this sort of long form drone and synth experiment. And I just think it's one of the most fascinating things. I think his story just, really, really speaks to your heart and soul. Mm-hmm. You listen to this guy, it's amazing. And he worked a lot of jobs, like a lot of artists and musicians did. He worked a lot of jobs I did. He was a janitor, he was a dishwasher, all that stuff. So he's just a fascinating character.
Wow. I have to check that out.
Yeah, he's really cool. He's done, Lonnie, Holley.
That's great.
Definitely worth checking out. He's a father of 15 himself.
Oh, too, my God.
Yeah, he's a really, really interesting guy.
Wow. Harry Nilsson is next. This is a great pick. The song is called One. This is a favorite of mine. I love Amy Mann's version of this.
Yeah, that's a fantastic version. And I think probably the most well-known version is the Three Dog Night version. I think it even may have been a #1 Billboard hit.
Well, I'm not
sure. It was definitely a top 10, but he sort of gave Three Dog Night a career with that song. And I think Nilsson doesn't really get remembered enough for how deep and amazing his catalog really is. He's got all these wonderful, wonderful 2.5 minute, less than 3 minute masterpieces that just tell this perfectly concise story. And I think One is one of the most penultimate examples of this for him. It's just a heart and gut-wrenching song. It's just beautiful. And his voice, yeah.
It's an incredible song. It's an incredible composition, actually.
Yeah, it really is. The electric piano, the way it comes in, just everything about it I find beautiful. It's one of my favorite songs actually to play.
Oh, you play this?
Yeah, I love playing his catalog. I think he sort of had a similar vocal range to me, and I just love singing his songs. I find every time I find something new in them, and I learn something about myself and my own songwriting through him. Another cool fact about Harry is, John and Paul both said in the heyday of the Beatles that he was their favorite songwriter. Their favorite American musician was Harry Nilsson.
Oh, really? Wow.
Yeah, and how he got on their radar, the story goes is that Derek Taylor, who was the press manager for the Beatles, heavily related throughout their whole career, he apparently, whether or not he had heard him do this Beatles mashup or not, but on one of Nilsson's records, he did a mashup of many, many Beatles songs.
Okay.
And that record, Derek Taylor bought 15 cases of it or something. Like he bought tons of copies of this record, and he distributed it to everybody he knew, including the Beatles. And then, Nilsson sort of sitting in the studio, and he gets a phone call from John Lennon, and then he gets a phone call from George Harrison. First he thought somebody was screwing with him, that he was getting pranked. Yeah. He's like, wait, no, who is this really? It's John Lennon. No, who is this? And then slowly he got invited into their circle, and him and Ringo and him and Lennon became, really close friends. And unfortunately, I think at the destruction of him and John, they like to party a lot together.
Oh, yeah. I remember seeing those John's Lost Weekend pictures with Nilsson in them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. And actually, that Lost Weekend, a lot of people think that's the last time that Paul and John ever played and recorded together. Nilsson and John were working on a record of Nilsson, and McCartney and Stevie Wonder showed up at the studio.
Oh, wow.
And they ended up all jamming together.
Wow. Where are the tapes?
They're called, they exist. I believe they're called A Toot and a Snore, which was a reference to Lennon asking if Stevie wanted a little toot.
No way. Wow.
Yeah.
I want to hunt that down. I'd love to hear that.
Yeah, it's different. It's certainly not polished. I think they were a bit inebriated. So
I bet. Have you seen those pictures of Lennon out?
Oh,
with
yeah,
yeah.
Yeah, almost sad.
Oh, I know. They really went after it. Neil Young is next. Bandit. This is from Greendale, I think, early 2000s.
Yeah, which is not an album that I think sort of like it's all too much. This song just doesn't get enough love for what it is. Bandit, it's one of those songs, for me, it moves me to tears every time I hear it. I think it's Neil at his most vulnerable to me, and there's something about, the story of this flawed character who's sort of given up, and yet, despite everything being in disarray, there's still this hope and this reminder that no matter what, you're okay. Everything's okay, and you're going to find everything you're looking for. I think that's such a beautiful message. And then it's interesting because Bob Dylan and Neil Young used to have this sort of back and forth with a few different songs. And there's a reference to Bob Dylan in this song that's kind of funny, because on Highlands by Dylan, which was off of Time Out of Mind, Bob sort of sings, I'm listening to Neil Young, I got to turn up the sound. Someone's always yelling, turn it down.
Yeah.
So Neil on this record, on Bandit, he's saying, no one can touch you now, but I can touch you now. You're invisible. You got too many secrets. And this is kind of funny. Then he says, Bob Dylan said that, or something like that, which I find kind of an hilarious line.
That's cool.
It's a reference to like a Rolling Stone.
Yeah, that's right. That's so cool. I love that those guys did that back and forth. Like even that Alabama thing, Sweet Home Alabama with Neil Young and Bowie
Skinner,
with writing a song about Robert Zimmerman, Bob Dylan.
Yeah, totally. Lennon did a lot of that too. Lennon would always sneak a Zimmerman or a Bob Dylan reference into his songs.
It's so cool.
Yeah, it is pretty cool. I guess Fourth Time Around, a lot of people say was about, was a Dylan song, was about, off of Blonde on Blonde actually, was about John Lennon sort of copying his style. A lot of people think it was kind of a snarky shot at him. And if you listen to it, it's quite similar to Norwegian Wood. So a lot of people say it's a parody of Norwegian Wood.
No way. I didn't even know that. Wow, that's cool.
Yeah, it's an interesting one for sure. One thing I love about Bandit more than anything is Neil tunes down his E string on the guitar, the low E, to a B. And you can just hear it. I mean, he's so raw in the way that he records, especially in that period. And you can just hear that B string vibrating right off the fretboard.
I love that.
And the texture is just incredible. It's like you're in the room with him when you hear that song.
You know what? It's funny that you say that, because I've always felt like I was in the room with Neil Young when I listened to his music, especially the stuff like Old Man and Alabama. Yeah. He's not trying to impress you. You know what I mean? He's doing it for himself. And if you like it, then great. But if not, it doesn't matter. That the strings sound like they haven't been changed in 5 years on his guitar. They buzz, his voice cracks. It's not for you, it's for him. He's just a brilliant musician. That's
exactly what I love about Neil Young. I'd say if I really had to think about it, he's probably the greatest influence on my own music. Just because of that, and also my vicinity to his music growing up. I mean, it's hard not to grow up in rural Ontario and not hear Neil Young all the time.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
And I think just by that exposure, I came to, sort of in this osmosis, sort of take on some of Neil Young's sensibility. That I love him. And I love that rawness. I think that's probably one of the coolest things about him. There's a story from recording Deja Vu with CSNY, and I think it was Graham Nash had done this vocal take, and Neil thought, it was so perfect, their first takes. He always wanted to keep the first take of everything.
Yeah.
And Nash went back and re-recorded a bunch of his vocals because he didn't think they were good enough, and Neil was pissed off because he thought that everything that they had done already was perfect, and they didn't need to overthink it. Like, he just loved that vulnerability, and you get it in one or two takes and keep it simple, and that's what makes it more beautiful and bigger.
Yeah.
I love that. He's heart. He's all about heart.
Oh yeah, and authenticity. Very simple and pure and very, very authentic.
And I think that's what it's ultimately about, is just being who you are and what you are, and laying that on the table and growing,
Absolutely. One more tune here, my friend. It is Jefferson Airplane and Today.
Yeah, that's a beautiful one.
1967.
Yep, one of the greatest years, I think, for music, in my opinion.
Oh, yeah.
That definitely. Little period after Pet Sounds in 66.
Yep.
And then, you know, you had Sergeant Pepper's as the answer.
Mm-hmm.
Just everything in 67 was so psychedelic, and all the pop music became extremely experimental as that, you know, psychedelic influence started to permeate everything in Western culture. It just became synonymous with it.
That would have been a crazy time to be alive. You know, I was born in 69, but like 67.
Yeah, I often think about it. I'm sure it would have been pretty incredible to experience. I know when George Harrison went to San Francisco, though, he was sort of disheartened by it all because he thought he was going to go and find all these people seeking, you know, some sort of
enlightenment,
answer, love, and, you know, a spiritual endeavor. But when he got there, he just said it was, you know, a lot of these drug-addled kids who were lost, and he felt really depressed by it. And I think that actually changed George Harrison in a big way.
Oh, wow, really?
Yeah, he talks about that he was really disappointed and kind of saddened when he saw San Francisco in that period.
That's a shame, because that's two major disappointments. You know, think about the Maharishi and them going down there, you know, and then coming back, and Lennon wrote that song Sexy Sadie about the Maharishi, and so two big letdowns for George.
For sure. Yeah, and I think one of the people that sort of helped George in terms of having, you know, faith in people and his beliefs was his relationship with Ravi Shankar and the sitar. And I think, you know, the two of them were super alike. But back to today, I just think it's such a lush and intimate song. That whole record, Surrealistic Pillow, is just one of the greatest. And the time that record came into my life, the Airplane quickly became my favorite band for a while there. And today was sort of the epitome of that for me. Just the way their voices blend. And I think Grace Slick is one of the greatest singers there ever was.
What was your mindset like when the Airplane became the Starship?
So, I mean, I didn't even know if I was born when they became the Starship, but
no, I don't
strange. No, I don't think so. But it's strange that it happened that way. I don't really see a thread between the two bands, so I tend to not even think of them as the same. Everything about it seems totally from another world.
That's how I look at it. They're two completely separate bands. Like, you think about We Built the City, and I don't know how that came out of, you know, anything that could have been Jefferson Airplane. Yeah,
it's such a different spirit, a different sound. The recordings are processed differently. It's not such an organic instrumentation, and that's what's so cool about the Airplane is there's just this organic, pure. It's like Neil Young again. There's just this purity to it, and I think that song speaks of that thing that I was talking about before, where you have to love yourself before you can love others. Today, to me, is really about that sort of love. This, you know, learning to love wholly inside and out, and that's what's so beautiful about it to me.
Apparently, the band wrote this song for Tony Bennett. He was recording next door in the same studio that Airplane was, and they wrote this song for him.
I had heard something about that. I wasn't sure if it was this song. I remember hearing they did that. That's really interesting. I didn't know it was this song.
Yeah, no, I love the band. I love Airplane. This is a great pick, great way to end a nice little list that you submitted here. I'm just glad that you're okay, buddy, because we, you know, after you're on the show for the first time, we hung out a couple times, and you know, when I heard that you were sick, I was pretty bummed. So I'm glad that you're back to normal, almost back to normal. But I wish you all the best in terms of your recovery.
Well, thanks so much, Brent. I'm doing it day by day, and I'm feeling, you know, even stronger because of it. And you know, it really helped me get into studying neuroscience and the relationship between the gut and the brain. You know, I like to think of as your second brain, and it really helped me change a lot of my routine and things like that strengthened other areas that weren't even related to my illness. Like, I found so many benefits from how I was feeling as a result of my diet and things like that to keep symptoms down. I found it also changed my mental health and my outlook on life in a big way for the better.
A lot of people take that for granted. don't they? You know, it just changes in diet and awareness and all that stuff. There's so much to that, and I think a lot of people often overlook it, but it's important stuff to consider for sure.
It is. It's easy to overlook, and I think a lot of it is actually counterintuitive, because the narrative a lot of the time is you need to think positive or change your thoughts, but really your thoughts developed, your inner dialogue developed later than your biochemical system and your nervous system, which is this age-old system that's in every living thing, you know, your dopamine and everything coming from your amygdala in your brain. There's this reward system that is really only related to our circadian rhythms, and we're designed to be diurnal. So if you're getting light in the morning and then at sunset, and you're staying away from screens and artificial light in the middle of the night and things like that, you're getting a solid sleep and you're eating well. It makes a huge difference. And then all of a sudden those behaviors start to influence your thought and your inner dialogue. And it's the opposite of what we tend to think.
Mm-hmm. Fascinating stuff, man. I am glad that you're okay, buddy. I want to thank you for coming on, taking the time, and I look forward to having you back on, maybe at Steam Whistle.
Yeah, I would absolutely love to do that and play a few songs. And
yeah, for sure.
that'd be an awesome way to get back out there, and thank you so much for having me, Brent. It's always a pleasure.
Oh, you're very welcome, man. It's good to talk to you. Ellis Meek, this has been No Sleep Till Sudbury with Brent Jensen. Till next time, folks, take good care.
Brent Jensen is the best-selling author of No Sleep Till Sudbury, Leftover People, and All My Favorite People Are Broken. All titles available in stores and on Amazon worldwide.